Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jaco. Behind the camera as always is Damia. In today's video I'm going to show you how I made this Platinum and Aquamarine Diamond set ring. Let me explain to you why this ring came about. This particular customer, I know I've worked with her for many years and I know what style of jewelry she likes. This ring was a little bit plain for her. She wanted to add diamonds, as she usually does. We were thinking and brainstorming about how we can add stones to this existing ring, and we decided at the end of the day to just remake the entire ring. If your planning is precise and your customer knows what to expect, you'll always find that if you follow through with what you've promised, that the customer's always happy. It's just a recipe that works. I had to take this stone to its full proportions and bring it into a reasonably small finger size, and within that lies a challenge. I know it's a sort of standard that worked because the customer was wearing it, and I want to make sure that we bring a new standard into it and then be able to compare the two to each other. I want to know where can I improve, and you can't do that without looking at the past. How do we balance this enormous stone with a very small finger size? What elements can I bring in to break it down so that there's presence on this ring? If what I've put down on paper makes sense to me structurally and visually to her, then I can just go ahead and execute it. I'm going to be putting a lot of time and effort into the setting itself, and if you know the way that I construct my jewelry, it's always starting with a stone and working downward. There are two rectangular housings that I'm going to create. We're not pressing this, we're not casting it. That's what makes it magical. We want to try and challenge ourselves to get something absolutely symmetrical, and it can be done. I'm creating those two bars because I've got a big stone. I'm trying to break the stone down, otherwise the height of the stone would be an issue with regards to the visual effect of the stone itself. By making sure that all the areas where the stone rests on these rectangles are seated. So I'm not finishing it up until this side, this side, and that side all equally touch it. So if that happens, the stone will lie absolutely flush. While the stone is in place and it hangs, it's seated here and it's seated over there, I'm having a look at the distance that these two created. Now my design didn't actually have that distance, but this is exactly what I was talking about how things develop while practically making it. I've decided while I was busy working that that little groove will be actually quite a nice feature. I took that distance and added in little platinum bars on the corner and brought it all together. The top part of it I'm going to drop down at all angles like this. Small diamonds around a big stone like that, or a colored stone, draws the attention towards the big stone. So my intention was to present the diamonds, but not on a flat area. So the top section I angled down so that it presents outwards. Angled area also breaks it down again from this height and drops it down towards the ring itself. But now I want the bottom section sorted out as well. I'm making two separate bands, which has got the diameter of the actual ring finger size, and pre-bending those and creating a little frame structure. Because of the volume of the stone, again, I'm looking for something structurally strong, and second of all, by using thicker bars of platinum like that, it also once again diminishes my stone. So what's fun with these three parts that I've made for the setting so far is I've created each part specifically on the angle of the stone itself. I don't have to cut away to house the stone. So the top part, middle part, as well as the bottom part at its angles seats the stone. How do I join the top to the bottom? If you're looking at my design right here, I've created pillars that hold this structure together. They need to be strong. I'm making the pillars with the mindset that I'm going to be adding larger diamonds into these. I use a bangle triplet to start off with, very small curves. I'm now comparing that angle to the setting itself. Where it connects, I want the strongest connection I possibly can get. I'm filing flat areas in over here so that when I solder it...
Because there's more surface areas in there.
Because there's more surface area, as the Maya is pointing out. I'm not working with exact figures and measurements here. I'm always working with a bit of excess. So I'm tacking these areas which I've filed, where I know I'm going to be soldering them on each one of the corners. And once it's in position, I'm marking down exactly how long I'm anticipating them to be. I can't have too much industrial looking strength on this type of ring design, because we're not building something that's just for architectural delight. It's for a person. Remember, I'm working chunky, but at the same time I also want movement. It develops from the ring upwards, and that's how I'm getting that design to work. So I'm filing these little pillars down to a taper. I'm also filing them slightly thinner, and I'm still sitting with all the thickness and all the strength I possibly need, but I've just hidden some of it into a sort of direction. I'm marking visually where I need to cut these claws away now so that this area can meet absolutely flush. Once I've marked them, I start with a little carbon disc and I just cut them straight off. There are areas that I'm not going to be able to reach once everything is connected. It's good time now to take everything apart and clean it up as best as you possibly can. Now that the claws have been cleaned on the inside, I can bring them back and put them into their permanent positions. I'm going to tack them where they meet the double frame. I'm tacking it by the double frame. I'm not yet soldering them together. And why am I doing this? Because in a single pivot point, it gives me the ability to move them around. The worst thing you can do is have any kind of like skewness to your setting itself, because it's such a big structure. It will immediately show. I can now take the stone, tape it together, so put it into place artificially, and then bring those parts together while the stone is in the setting. With the laser, I'm tacking the rest of it. I then take the stone out, and now it's time to bring the solder in. Now it's time to heat the platinum to where we need to heat it to get it to be structurally strong as we can possibly get it. These little corners create a little triangle. But because of the way that I built that setting, I now have these little cavities which are perfect for the claws, which are the next thing I'm going to be making. The double setting gives me double strength. Note that I'm making them higher than what they need to be. Again, we're not working with the right size, we're working with an excessive size. Also, that leverage gives me, in a case like this, lots of leverage to bend those claws down onto the stone before I cut them. Leverage is an important thing when it comes down to sensitive stones.
Are the aquamarines a sensitive stone?
Everything is sensitive. I'm making a band for the ring. The ring needs a band. The customer wanted this cluster type setting to join the ring itself, which I agree with, because it's quite a fun way to distract from the height of the stone as well. Something else to draw your attention to. The way I'm going to be making this is by doing a two-part band in a way. We have certain elements we're working with. Here I'm working with a finger size, and I'm also working with how high do I want this reach of the band to meet the actual setting itself. If we do this in solid metal, it will be completely impractical with regards to its weight. Those are the two parts that I need to work on. Now I need to bring something into that to fill it up, and I'm going to be using plate construction. We're going to fuse all of this together. So what are we doing when I say fuse? We're going to melt all the platinum together. We're creating one piece out of separate plates. To be able to break that into a rounding, which visually looks like the whole thing is just rounded, was tricky. Here's the one optical illusion, which I sort of like, it challenged me in a way, because we've got such a high top and such a rectangular thing I'm busy building. Remember, if I'm putting plates together, they're just plates, it's square. By pushing the plates into those grooves, not putting them on the outside, pushing them into the grooves allowed me to put one piece of metal into a corner, which I could then sacrifice and round. The setting method also contributed towards the rounding effect. Visually, when you're looking at it, it's round, but actually if you're looking at it, it's got two straight walls and a top. But because of those walls being pushed into that setting, I had some solid material over here which I could sacrifice, and then the stones themselves, because of the scattered nature of them, created this sort of like blur into a rounded effect. Why do I want a rounded effect? I'm working towards who I know my customer to be. I want a bit of femininity into this. I want a bit of rounding into it. I want a solid ring, but I want that to meet all this construction on a soft way. I'm using the space as far as I possibly can with symmetry. So I'm looking at how I can space the stone symmetrically. And when it comes down to where the parts taper out, I'm looking at the spaces in between. This is the type of set work where I'm setting all the stones, and once I've set the stones, if there's any remaining material in between that, I then also divide that up. I'm looking for an effect where you just see the diamonds and the little beads in between. And I'm essentially paving the whole thing so that it's scattered. The whole thing shines. The individuality of a diamond loses its purpose and the whole area becomes something that glitters. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking at the setting and I'm looking at my original design, and what it doesn't include is this gap. Because there's two parts, I've now created some spot which has got some weakness to it. So I'm going to put little supports in between those little grooves, just 4 supports. And in those supports, I can then use those to set some smaller diamonds as well. If you're in the trade and you're just starting out and you're thinking, one day I want to make stuff like this, don't give up. Because if you get to the point where you are spoiled as what I am to make jewelry like this, it just doesn't get better. You go into a world where you're just so captivated by what you're doing that afterwards, when you're looking back at it, and especially with making these videos, when you're looking into these, you're looking back at the techniques and stuff, I can't tell you that that's the way I would have done it the second time around or another time around. I'm so within the zone. You never look at the thing because you're analyzing small little parts of it. But once it's done, it's part of that satisfaction. And then on top of that, the customer just goes, wow, this is amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your support. Thank you for the comments. We really honestly try and get back to those as quick as we possibly can. I'm gathering from what people are saying that this handmade thing is busy dying out. It's not. It's not. It's becoming more refined. It's maybe not the usual thing. Maybe it's easier and cheaper to cast things and provide it from suppliers. There's no fun in that. We're having fun. We're making a living out of doing what we're doing. And there's a lot more appreciation in what we do. We'll see you next time.
See you guys next
Cheers.
time.
Bye guys. Cheers.
Bye.